Hi folks, this is Alan's workshop. Today we are looking at a full replacement of keyboard and battery. On a MID-2012 MacBook Pro 15-inch, this is A1398 model. There are a couple of issues that I'm willing to fix on this model. The battery is a little bit aging now. The keyboard, I'm willing to replace it for an English plus Russian keyboard in place of the actual French old keyboard. And I'm also having a couple of issues with the screen itself. It's been moving over time a little too much, so I'm also willing to fix that as well. All the spare parts can be bought online, of course, spare battery, spare keyboards, and a lot of screws to attach the new keyboard to the frame once you've removed the old keyboard. First thing I suggest you to do, if you have a complex password and you fear you won't be able to remember it on your new keyboard, is to add the corresponding language. If your keyboard is going to be different from the old one, I suggest you to either remove the password or add the corresponding new languages. To do that, you need to open the keyboard settings. And in my case, I had to add the ABC QWERTY settings as well as the new Russian settings for my new keyboard. After that, you can go to Session Password and enter your old password and leave the subsequent fields empty to remove the password. Once you're done with that, ensure you can close your session and open it again without password. Okay, and now let's proceed to the serious things. First of all, we need to remove the backplate. And after that, we will need to remove every component which is inside, including the battery, the logic board, some extension cards, the battery, the backlight of the keyboard, and the keyboard itself. We will start by removing the fans that are located on each side, and for that we will first need to remove the little two rubber bands that are glued on top of them. Be careful if this is the first time you remove them, they are a little fragile, so they might be glued firmly to each of the fans, so just pull them gentle and they should come off. In my case, this is not the first time that I opened this computer, so they just came off very easily. We will start by removing the left fan, which is the easier one because there is nothing else on top of it to be removed first. We will see that it's not the same on the other side. So you've got 3 screws to remove on each fan. This is very simple. And also you've got one connector which is connecting these fans to the logic board. Also, I remind you that the connectors are very small, so be extremely careful when you pull them off. They might just break very easily. Just push them out gently and they should come off. After that, you can move to the right fan, which is a little more complex to remove, because here you will need first to remove a couple of other things. First of all, you need to remove the 3 connectors of the Wi-Fi antenna, and after that you've got an additional screw to remove to be able to remove the Wi-Fi card itself. Once that's done, you should be able to unplug the Wi-Fi card, and you've got an additional cable that is a little glued to the fan itself, so just be careful with that also. After that, just have a look around the logic board and remove various connectors that you will find. You will need to remove them before being able to unscrew the logic board itself and remove it, so it's necessary to unplug the various connectors that are located all around. Some of the connectors will pop off very easily, and others are tied very tightly to the board itself. For example, on the top right side, you will see this is the video connector, so we'll need to unlock it before being able to pull it off. And on the opposite side of the board you've got the exact same sort of connector, just like the video connector on the other side. So you will need to unlock it and remove it as well. Again, it might be a little tight, so just take your time to remove it properly. Okay, so now that you are done with that, you have an additional screw to remove so that you will be able to extract the SSD. So just remove this little screw and unplug the SSD itself. It will need to go out as well, just like everything else. Alright, this is how it should look like so far. We have extracted the fans, we have extracted the Wi-Fi cards, we have unplugged a lot of cables around, we have extracted the SSD and the extension card on the left side. So now we will need to remove the logic board itself to be able to access the keyboard that we want to replace. So for that you have again a lot of screws to remove. Also don't forget to unplug this little connector on the top. This is the backlight connector. Again, more screws to extract. You've got to be very careful not to miss anyone. There are 5 or 6 of them that are attaching the logic board to the frame. Also unplug the sound connector on the right side. Also be careful because the logic board itself is attached to the charging port on the top right end of the frame. So you will have either to remove the connector of the charging port or to unscrew the charging port itself, which is the option that I chose here. Also remove the keyboard connector. And after that you should be able to remove the logic board itself. It should look like that when you've extracted it. Once that's done, you've got 2 additional screws to remove, which are holding in place the battery connector. The battery itself is glued, but you will need to remove those 2 screws also. Here I also need to remove the screen itself because of my little movement issue on the screen. So to do that you will have 3 screws on each side, plus an additional little screw which is holding 2 little metallic dust cover. So it means 4 screws on each side of the screen to be able to remove the screen. Once that's done, the entire display assembly will go out. And here you can see I had a ton of movement on each side of the display assembly, despite having very little movement when it was assembled with the rest of the frame. We can see that it was in fact barely holding into place. I did not manage to film the repair of that part, but it means removing the plastic cover on the bottom of the screen and fixing back the 2 little screws that are inside to fix this movement issue. After that we need to remove the backlight cover. This is glued into place, so I recommend using a little heat to remove that. The backlight will still work normally after that. Just do not cut anything here, just apply a little bit of heat to remove gently the backlight cover. And after that just pull it off gently. Be careful not to break anything here. It's a little fragile, so you need to be careful with what you're doing. And once that's done, you will have access to the keyboard itself, which is riveted to the frame. Before completely finishing to extract the backlight, I used the opportunity to heat up the battery cells a little, just to be able to unglue them. They are glued to the frame of the MacBook Pro, so you will need a little heat also to remove them. I've seen several techniques to remove that. Please, in any case, do not force onto the frame itself with any kind of tool. What you can use is simply a little string to pull it off, to pull each cell individually. This is the best way that I found to remove this. In any way, this is a nightmare to remove. Once the first cell has been pulled off, the others will come a little more easily, but still you will need to heat them up a little and use some kind of card to pull them off. And once this is done, you can extract the battery and you will be left with little glue residues all around, so you will need to remove that as well. Once this is done, and after finishing to remove the backlight of the keyboard, you will have access to the keyboard itself. And here there are no miracle solutions. The keyboard is riveted to the frame, so you will need to pull it off one way or another. The best way is to start at the top angle, pull 2 or 3 rivets off, and after that the subsequent ones will come off quite easily. And this is the result. You will be left with some unusable keyboards and parts of rivets all around. Luckily this is plastic rivets, so they will just create little holes in the frame that you can use to fix the new keyboard in place with the help of the screws that you need to buy as well. Also, don't make the same mistake that I did. You have 2 additional screws to remove on top of the keyboard. They are located right under the trackpad, so they are easy to find, but they are not rivets, so they need to be unscrewed and removed before being able to slide the new keyboard in place. And at that location you can fix new screws into place. This will also help to hold the new keyboard into place. Okay, and after maybe 30 or 40 minutes of putting new screws into place, this is what it should look like. Once the new keyboard is in place, I will just put the new battery in and then press on each cell individually to ensure that the glue that is under it will stick to the frame. After that, I simply put into place the backlight cover. There is no need to add any glue or anything else, it should just be able to stick back into place. Also, you will need to fold the keyboard connector in 2 parts, just to take example on what it looks like on the old keyboard. After that, you should be able to put back in the logic board itself as well as the other components in the reverse order. Just be careful not to miss any screw when you fix back in place the logic board, and also correctly fix into place the charging port. Also be careful not to leave any connector under the logic board when you fix it back into place. I made this mistake myself by letting the backlight connector under the logic board before fixing it into place, so I had to dismount and remount it twice. After that, you can fix back into place the SSD card as well as the Wi-Fi card. Simply just slide them in and fix the corresponding screws into place. After fixing any component back in, you should just have a couple of missing connectors to put into place. The extension connector on the right side, and in my case I will also have to put back in the whole display assembly. Here I already put back in the keyboard connector, and we will leave the battery connector until the very end. And on the left side we've got 2 or 3 other connectors to put back in, including the speaker connector. Time to put back in the display assembly, so I start by trying to align it properly and putting back the 3 screws on each side of the assembly itself. I won't tighten them up too firmly at first because I want to make sure that the lid closes properly before finishing to fix them into place. So I put them back into place firmly enough to be able to close the lid, adjust it and see if it correctly adjusts before finishing to tighten them up. So here check your time not to break anything on the screen, including the connectors on the side as well as the Wi-Fi antenna. Adjust the 3 screws on each side. After that you can put back in the Wi-Fi antenna going through the little plastic recess on the right side. And after that you should be able to adjust it back into place on top of the right fan. The connectors should be aligned with the Wi-Fi card. Just plug in the camera connector as well as the 3 antenna connectors. They are very tiny, so just be careful when you plug them back into place. On the opposite side you will need to plug back in the video connector. It is also a little tricky to put back in, so just take your time to plug it in properly and secure it back into place with the little bracket. Okay, now it's time to properly secure back into place the display assembly. Remember that for now we've let the 3 screws on each side a little loose so that we can make sure that the display assembly aligns with the bottom frame. So we will just close the lid and make sure that the screen aligns correctly with the bottom frame. And once it is properly aligned, we will just tie up into place the 3 screws on each side. Now that the display assembly is properly fixed into place, do not forget as well to put back in the little dust covers on each side. So they are just held by 1 screw on each side that you will need to plug back in. Do the exact same thing on the opposite side. And at that point you should only be left with the battery connector. You can check a last time that you didn't miss anything by looking the connectors on the side of the board. So at that point you should be ready to plug back the battery in. Just have a last look. Anyway, time to plug everything in and check that it's working correctly. You can fix back the back plate. And we are finally done. A fully repaired MacBook Pro with a repaired screen, a new battery, and a new ShareAlike keyboard. This wraps up this video. If you've watched so far and you've enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. This will help you to get notified when I publish new content. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.